The alarm clock rang at 5:30 in the morning, as usual. Larissa Mendes, 28, a nurse at the Santa Catarina Municipal Hospital, reached out to turn it off and felt the first twinge. It was as if a crochet needle had been twisted in her lower abdomen. She took a deep breath, attributing the discomfort to PMS. Her period was only 3 days late. Nothing to worry about. While drinking coffee, she noticed that her uniform pants were tighter around the waist. Bloating, she thought, loosening the button. In the bathroom mirror, she observed her reflection as she brushed her teeth. Something caught her attention. Her abdomen seemed slightly rounded, different from normal. Larissa ran her hand over the smooth, cold skin, and then it happened, a distinct movement, as if something had turned inside her. The glass of water fell from her hands, shattering on the floor. Larissa backed away, leaning against the wall. "Impossible," she muttered, her hands now trembling over the small abdominal bulge. She counted in her head, 5 months since her last relationship, 3 months since her last regular period. The numbers didn't add up. Asterisk. She ran to the medicine cabinet, knocking over bottles until she found a forgotten pregnancy test at the bottom. Seconds after urinating on the stick, the result appeared. Negative. A sigh of relief escaped her lips, followed immediately by another wave of internal movement, this time stronger, more intentional. Larissa fell to her knees in the bathroom, her nails digging into the porcelain tile as she watched, horrified, her abdomen writhing beneath, her skin as if a living creature were trying to escape. She did not yet know that this morning would mark the beginning of a nightmare that defied all the laws of medicine, that in the coming days she would discover that her uterus harbored something much worse than a baby, something that should not exist. The clock on the wall read 6:15 when Larissa decided to call the ultrasound clinic. As she dialed, her belly made a low, wet sound, like a sigh coming from within. Asterisk. The ultrasound clinic's waiting room smelled of disinfectant and anxiety. Larissa sat in the last chair in the hallway, her hands sweating over the bag resting on her lap. Her eyes burned with fatigue. She had barely slept the night before, keeping watch over her own body as if it might betray her at any moment. Larissa Mendes. The receptionist called out to her with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. The hallway to the exam room seemed to stretch out before her. Each step echoed, accompanied by the muffled sound of her heartbeat in her ears. The ultrasound technician, a middle-aged man with deep circles under his eyes, pointed to the gurney. "First time doing an ultrasound?" he asked, preparing the gel dot. Larissa nodded, lying down as she felt the coolness of the gel spread over her skin. The transducer pressed against her abdomen, and the black and white image appeared on the screen beside her. The technician froze. His fingers fluttered over the keyboard. "This is peculiar," he muttered, zooming in. Asterisk. Larissa turned her head to the screen. What she saw made her gasp. Where there should have been a gestational sac, there was only a fuzzy, pulsating mass, with dark veins radiating out like the roots of a wicked tree. In the center, something writhed, not a fetus, but an elongated, almost serpentine shape. "What is that?" Her voice came out in a whisper. The technician didn't answer. He adjusted the settings again, switching to Doppler mode. The sound that emerged from the speakers was not the gentle heartbeat of a fetus, but something that sounded like chewing, wet, irregular. That was when Larissa felt the first sharp pang, as if something were biting her from the inside. The technician jumped out of his chair as the monitors began to beep frantically. On the screen, the mass now showed more defined contours, something like jaws opening and closing inside her. "I need to call the doctor," he said, running off. Larissa was left alone with the image on the screen, watching in horror as the thing inside her seemed to stare back through the ultrasound, its contours changing, adapting, as if it knew it was being watched. The medical report fluttered in Larissa's hands as she waited in the hallway of the radiology department. The blurred words on the page danced before her eyes. Ultrasound findings inconsistent with typical pregnancy. MRI with contrast. Recommended. Possible neoplasm or parasitic condition. The air conditioning blew coldly on her neck when Dr. Albuquerque finally emerged from the exam room. His impeccable lab coat, a stark contrast to his troubled expression. "We need to talk," he said, guiding her into a consulting room. The sound of the door closing echoed like a sentence. On the table between them, the MRI images spread out like macabre tarot cards. Larissa saw her own uterus depicted in cross-sectional slices and, inside it, The mass now clearly defined, not round like a fetus, but elongated, segmented, with protuberances that resembled limbs. In 30 years of practice, the doctor wiped his glasses with nervous movements. This resembles a case I saw at the residency in Belo Horizonte, 1998. Her fingers pointed to a hazy area. Look at these chitinous structures, almost like an exoskeleton in formation. Larissa felt a synchronized movement inside her, as if the thing knew it was being discussed. Her nails dug into the flesh of her thighs. Are you telling me it's not human? Asterisk. The silence that followed spoke louder than any answer. Dr. Albuquerque opened a drawer, pulling out a scientific paper. In German, black and white photographs showed a woman with a distended abdomen in 1956, with handwritten notes. Subject 12 surgical excision revealed chitinized structure with bilateral symmetry. We need more specialized tests. He typed something into his computer. I've made an appointment with Dr. Vigas of the Institute of Tropical Diseases. He studies anomalies. In the taxi on the way home, Larissa pressed her hands against her abdomen. The thing moved in response, its contours now visible through her tight blouses. If it was stretching, testing its limits. The driver watched, in the rearview mirror, his eyes widening as a fist-sized bulge pushed against Larissa's skin for an instant before retreating. Her house smelled of mildew and fear. On the sink, 3 bottles of vitamin supplements were lined up, the same ones she had started taking after finishing, prescribed by a neighborhood nutritionist. Larissa picked one up, reading the label with new eyes. Exclusive formula with Tribulus terrestris extract and dried larvae. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Raquel, but the voice that came out of the receiver wasn't her friend's. It was a harsh, guttural whisper, repeating in a loop, "Mom, Mom, Mom." When Larissa hung up with a scream, the hallway mirror reflected her belly, momentarily deformed in impossible geometric patterns, like carnal origami folds. The 4th night after the consultation brought the first vivid dream. Larissa found herself lying on a colonial operating table, her legs spread wide under kerosene lights. Figures in musty lab coats surrounded her, their faces hidden by masks of aged leather. One of them held a pair of forceps that were not medical. They were blacksmiths, glowing red-hot, shaped to extract something specific. 5th case this month, a voice murmured as metal instruments clinked on a stained tray. The colony is expanding. Larissa woke to a gush of warm fluid between her legs. The sheet was soaked in an amber liquid that smelled of rancid honey and metal. Her belly pulsed in visible waves. The skin stretched to transparency in spots, revealing shadows of legs, antennae. The camera on her cell phone shook in her hand as she began filming. In the video, her belly button distended like a button being pressed from within, followed by a series of sequential bulges, too perfect to be random. It was language, code. When the first object fell off the bathroom shelf by itself, Larissa still attributed it to a tremor. But then the mirror fogged up, forming droplets that ran down to draw symbols. An inverted uterus, a tree with flesh roots, a clock showing 3:17. It was at that moment that she heard the singing, coming from the walls, from the pipes. A chorus of children's voices humming a melody that Larissa recognized from her childhood, the same one her grandmother sang, but with distorted lyrics. Asterisk, sleep, my son, in the warm womb, because soon your mother won't feel it, the day your mouth turns hammy, feeds on your mother's flesh. Her reflection in the mirror smiled when she screamed. It wasn't her smile. It had too many teeth. Larissa's grandmother's medical notebook smelled of mothballs and dried bay leaves. The yellowed pages, written in archaic Portuguese, detailed cases that had occurred in the village of Visxu. In 1937, women gave birth to creatures with chitinous scales. The priests called them devil's offspring, but Dr. Figueiredo discovered the truth in the wheat mills. Larissa ran her finger over an anatomical sketch, showing a uterus with black veins radiating like spiderwebs, the same as the one she was now seeing in her scans. The wind whistled through the cracks in the attic window as a photograph slid down from the mound. Larissa froze. The image showed her great-grandmother pregnant in 1951, holding a glass jar of something floating in formaldehyde, a fetus, with 6 jointed limbs and compound eyes, written in charcoal on the back. 3rd generation accelerated incubation. Eggs now autoclavable. Her own belly contracted in response, as if the thing knew its secret was being revealed. A searing pain made her double over the table, knocking over candles. That was when she saw it. The liquid dripping from between her legs was not amniotic. It was viscous and phosphorescent, leaving blue marks on the wooden floor that smoked faintly. The phone rang. It was Dr. Vegas, his voice distorted by interference. Larissa, the tests are not parasites. They are symbiotes ... modified in a laboratory during the Estado Novo, a secret project to create soldiers. Their supplements had... The line went dead when something inside her made a high-pitched noise, like the screech of a bat. At that moment, Larissa understood. It was not a pregnancy. It was a harvest. The kitchen knife trembled in Larissa's hand as she stared at the bathroom mirror. Her abdomen now measured 38 inches in circumference. The skin stretched so taut that black veins pulsated in fractal patterns. Inside, something was scratching fingernails. Claws, you can try, whispered a voice that wasn't hers, coming from the bathroom drain. But we're already in your bones. The first shallow cut released a jet of electric blue liquid that ate away at the porcelain. When Larissa stuck her fingers into the opening, she found a smooth surface. No uterus, no organs, just a hollow cavity where her anatomy should be, lined with something that resembled honeycombs of living flesh. The radio in the room turned on by itself, tuned to a dead frequency. Warning from the Institute of Tropical Diseases. Contamination in Vitalis vitamin supplements. Modified strain of cordyceps militaris with DNA from ... Immediate quarantine of pregnant women recommended. Larissa fell to her knees as a contraction doubled her over. In the reflection of the fogged mirror, her belly distended into impossible geometric shapes, casting shadows that did not obey the laws of physics. The creature was positioning itself for birth. When the bathroom door opened by itself, revealing the dark hallway, Larissa understood the invitation. She needed to go to the hospital. But first, she needed to get the vial from the freezer. The one Dr. Vegas had said contained the inhibitor. Her hand slipped on the banister as she descended the stairs, each step accompanied by the sound of hoofs inside her. In the kitchen, the freezer was covered in black jelly, its interior illuminated by a pulsing light. When Larissa opened it, she found the vial, and the doctor's notebook with the final note. Inhibitor, not for them. Only for you. Larissa, you are not pregnant. You are infected. They have already rewritten your DNA. You are the first mother of the new species. The smell of antiseptic burned Larissa's nostrils as the operating room spotlights blinded her. Lying on the operating table, her hands bound to leather straps, she could see through the reflection in the steel of the instruments. Her belly was no longer human. Her skin, translucent as parchment, revealed moving shadows, articulated limbs rearranging themselves, chitinous spines forming in fractal patterns. Dr. Vegas adjusted her mask with trembling fingers. General anesthesia won't work, he murmured to the team. Her nervous system is already integrated. A heart monitor flashed impossible numbers, 240 BPM, then 12, then NA. When the scalpel touched her skin, Larissa didn't scream. They screamed for her. A chorus of high-pitched voices exploded from her abdomen, shattering 3 surgical lamps. The sound echoed through the empty corridors of the abandoned hospital, where the walls were covered in a viscous web that pulsed, in sync with her contractions. God help us. Nurse Cruz recoiled as the first jet of black liquid hit her lab coat, eating away at the tissue to the bone in seconds. Larissa felt the internal blades. Blades turn inside her like a meat grinder. Her vision bifurcated. She could see the operating room, but she could also see through dozens of pairs of eyes that were not her own. On the walls of her uterus, crystalline structures grew like coral trees, forming an independent neural network. The ultrasound computer now displayed words in a dead language. Mother, free US. And then the abominable miracle began. The first surgical cut revealed what the scans had not shown. Larissa no longer had any internal organs. Her abdomen was a hollow chamber, lined with bioluminescent membranes, where hundreds of thin creatures clung, each with 6 articulated limbs and eyes that reflected the room like convex mirrors. Larval stage Vegas swallowed hard as he shone a flashlight into the cavity. The light revealed that the walls of the chamber were engraved with symbols identical to those on vitamin supplements. Larissa laughed. It wasn't her laughter, it was their laughter. Dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of unisounding childlike giggles. coming out of her mouth as her body began to unfold like anatomical origami. Its ribs parted like the petals of a carnivorous flower, revealing the colony at the height of its metamorphosis. Nurse Cruz fell to her knees. Praying in Latin, the instrumentalist vomited as he watched the larvae weave threads of silver silk between Larissa's exposed bone threads that glowed with the same pattern as the human genetic code. Directed evolution, Vegas whispered, fascinated, as he recorded the whole thing on his cell phone. The Vitalis Project was never about vitamins. It was about transcendence. A larger larva, the size of a pigeon, rose up in the center of the uterine chamber. Its eyes reflected scenes that were not in the room. Forests being consumed by intelligent mists. Cities being reshaped by biotech swarms. A future where the line between human and otherness dissolved like flesh in acid. Larissa felt her own memories being devoured, rearranged. She remembered her grandmother, then not the old lady she had known, but a young woman in 1963, signing papers in a military laboratory, receiving her first dose of special vitamins for strong women. The heart monitor beeped one last time, before exploding. When the first strands of silver silk emerged from Larissa's mouth, Vegas finally understood. The larvae were not being born. They were weaving a cocoon around what was left of Larissa Mendes, fusing her skeleton with the crystalline structures, reprogramming each neuron to serve as an antenna. The last thing Larissa saw with human eyes was Nurse Cruz being enveloped by shiny strands coming out of her own mouth, transformed into raw material. The last thing she felt was ecstasy, as 1,000 minds connected to hers in a chorus of voices that whispered, "Mother of the clouds, bridge to the soft world." When the rescue team found the operating room 12 hours later, there was only a 2-meter-high cocoon, gently pulsating to the sound of synchronized heartbeats, and on the computers, a message flashed on all the screens: "We have awakened, we wait for the other mothers." The air in the Vitalis clinic smelled of lavender and menthol, a perfect disguise for the underlying odor of fresh meat being metabolized. Anna, Asha, 6 weeks pregnant, adjusted her gown over her small abdominal bulge as she waited in the ultrasound room. Her fingers drummed on the bottle of Vitalmater supplements her doctor had prescribed. "Relax." Mrs. Oliveira, the nurse, smiled as she read her worried expression. "The procedure is painless." Her crisp white coat hid the circular burn marks on her wrist wounds that never fully healed. When the lights went out for a moment, Anna swore she saw something move behind the screen. Not a shadow, but a fold in the air, as if space were being pressed inward. 3 years earlier, sound of surgical drills echoed through the level 4 containment room of the Institute of Tropical Diseases. Dr. Vegas, now with graying hair and a nervous twitch in his left eye, watched through the bulletproof glass as the intervention team advanced on the pulsating pod. "Contact in 3, 2, the captain's voice boomed over the speakers. The first jet of piercing acid hit the silvery surface, and then the world slowed down. The pod didn't explode, it unfolded, like a flower of liquid steel, revealing Larissa sitting in the fetal position, or at least, what was left of her. Her torso was now an expanded thoracic cage, bones transformed into crystalline structures that refracted light in hypnotic patterns. Where organs should have been, there was only a void filled with movement like swarms of fireflies in an endless night. "Larissa," Vegas whispered into the intercom. The creature that had been Larissa raised her head. Her face was still human, but her eyes, oh God, her eyes, they contained the entire night sky, constellations that did not belong on any earthly map. When she spoke, 1,000 voices spoke in unison. "You gave us mothers. We will give you stars." Sinana's ultrasound showed a perfect fetus den, tiny fingers, a clear spine. The technician smiled as he marked the measurements. "Everything normal," he lied, knowing that the small anomaly in the upper left corner of the image, that shadow that looked like it had joints, would never be mentioned in the report. Meanwhile, in the basement of the clinic, the incubators glowed softly. Hundreds of vials held embryos suspended in amber liquid, each with tiny anatomical variations. A card on each shelf read, Phase 3 Planetary Adaptation. In the monitoring room, a screen displayed real-time statistics. Pregnant women exposed, 12,341 conversion rate, 98.7% time to mass maturation, 284 dies. Vegas, now Vitalis's medical director, watched the data as he sipped a bitter coffee. His reflection on the monitor didn't quite match his movements. There was a half-second delay, as if something beneath his skin was learning to imitate humanity a little more slowly. When the alert flashed on the screen, "New Queen Mother, detected Sector 9B, he smiled for the first time in years. The plan was well underway. Clinics in a dozen countries were already distributing the supplements free to pregnant women in underserved areas. Governments celebrated the reduction in maternal mortality, ignoring reports of shared dreams among expectant mothers. Larissa's diary was found in an abandoned house on the outskirts of Belo Horizonte. The last pages, written in a handwriting that gradually changed to something inhuman, contained mathematical formulas mixed with poetry. The womb is only the first wombed world is the second one. Mothers awaken thee will weave a new veil over the eyes of God. Attached to the notebook was a flash drive with a single video file. In it, Larissa, or appeared to be Larissa, sat in an infinite white room. She smiled at the camera as her womb opened like a stargate, revealing not blood and viscera, but miniature galaxies. You always thought evolution was slow, the voices whispered, but what if it's just a labor that's taking forever? When the video ended, the police technician who watched it was diagnosed with a spontaneous male pregnancy. Her ultrasound showed only darkness where organs should have been, a darkness that, according to him, sang lullabies in languages that had not yet been invented.